All right, thank you, Foster, and really excited tonight. We have 4 folks here tonight going to be part of our panel to talk about affordable home ownership models. To sort of navigate this as best as I can, I was going to do a little bit of an overview, but first that will include kind of sharing my screen, and I'll probably be flipping back and forth so you can see them, but I wanted to introduce who was here. So first, Michelle Alford, the Cooperative Site Manager from Arrowwood Hills Cooperative. Thanks for coming, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Wanisha Brand, who's Director of Operations from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. Welcome, Wanisha.
Thank you, Teresa. Hello, everyone.
Rob Nisley, who does not like this title, Chief Strategy Officer of Habitat for Humanity of Huron Valley. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
And Vince Wang is joining us. He's the Director of Research from Grounded Solutions Network. Hi, Vince.
Hi, thank you, and hi, everyone.
And it's not evening for Vince. He's coming to us, what, in the afternoon, right?
Mid-afternoon. I'm from the West Coast in Portland.
Thanks so much for joining us. So I'm gonna start this off and just do a little bit of an overview, and then what I'm gonna do is introduce each person, kind of talking about one of the home ownership models, and do a little Q&A. I'm gonna ask that folks sort of wait to save your questions the best you can till the end, because we do have kind of a lot of content to get through, and hopefully we'll be answering a lot of your questions along the way. So thanks, everybody. Let me know if you can see this slide deck okay. Okay, great. All right, so first I wanted to just talk a little bit and frame this conversation that there's kind of 2 main categories on tools for affordable home ownership. So one I sort of categorize as more traditional, and it's focused on sort of home ownership and wealth creation, the ability to accumulate wealth through the ownership of the home and pass it on to any heirs or descendants. And there's various tools within that. A lot of them are really about trying to lower the price of purchasing a home, or somehow making it more affordable for a lower moderate income household to afford a mortgage payment. So there's down payment assistance, there's home ownership vouchers, which Wanisha will be talking about. There's low interest mortgage programs that are done by banks and credit unions and other financial institutions. And then there's other grants or programs that basically are adding housing stock in different ways at below market sales prices. One other thing that is sort of naturally occurring within the market is lower cost alternative to single family homes like condos and townhomes that don't have as much cost around taxes and other things, and just lower prices in general. Those are a little bit different, but they are naturally occurring. And so I want to make sure we talk about that too. The second category, and I think about it as a goal, is around long-term affordability. And that's also about getting access to, right? So if we're able to create long-term affordability and offer access to folks, that's access to job centers, access to schools, all those sorts of things. And there's various tools to doing that. We're going to be talking about those today. Limited equity housing cooperatives, which Michelle will be telling us about. Deed restricted housing, I'm going to talk a little bit about that one. And community land trusts, which Vince is going to cover for us tonight. All right, so we're going to start off with wealth creation. And I threw together as many of the challenges and successes that I could think of around achieving this, right, for the wealth creation. The challenges that we're facing in Ann Arbor: high land costs, high construction costs, high taxes, low supply. Those low moderate income households are being priced out. They also might not be mortgage ready, might have some issues with credit or debt to be addressed before they're ready to take on a mortgage. Then there's just the long-term cost of ownership, post-purchase maintenance. And then we have found that there's also costs for transferring ownership to heirs when you have to wait through probate court and taxes accumulate over time. So there's some challenges there. Successes though, right? If you are a homeowner, you've got monthly fixed housing costs. They're more predictable and consistent than renting. You get control of your living environment. You're growing equity, hopefully by the point of your resale. You have the potential for a home equity loan for starting a business or doing improvements to your home. Building your credit history, obviously some federal income tax benefits if you're able to itemize. And if you pay off that mortgage, those housing costs are amazingly affordable. Still got the taxes, of course, but you're going to be reducing your monthly housing costs. So before we get into the models, I just want to do a quick little look at what we're talking about in the Ann Arbor market. So looking at the Ann Arbor Board of Realtors December year to date, median sales prices for the Ann Arbor School District. For a single family home, it's $450,000, $907, right? So that's the median middle price. Average price varies obviously, but that's where we are for the cost of a single family home. But I mentioned sort of in the market though, there's things that are cheaper that you could still own on your own. And there are things, and we often direct lower and moderate income households to them, townhomes and condos. And that median sales price is $268,800. In addition to the price being less, your taxes are less because you're only paying for the cost of your taxes on the unit itself. So just highlighting this because we're going to talk about a lot of tools, but also variation in housing types is very important. That diversity in housing type also impacts affordability. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to switch over to Rob. So Rob, do you mind giving us a little bit of an overview of Habitat for Humanities programs first?
Sure. Habitat for Humanity, we've been in Washtenaw County for 32 years now. Certainly in the last 14 years, our main focus has been buying and renovating foreclosed and blighted homes in particularly to the east, but means certainly some here in the city of Ann Arbor. So we'll buy the property. We have relationships with contractors, often getting donations, gift in kind. You can imagine that we get volunteers out at the work site. That's a really great way for the community to participate and to help, and it can keep our costs low. And then, at the same time, while we're buying and renovating the home, we have a pipeline of families that, we're hoping to sell to. For our organization, we're selling between 30 and 80% of AMI. That's the range where we work. The families, they go through financial education, home maintenance, other kinds of pre-purchase classes, along with about 200 hours of sweat equity. So each adult in the household participates in addition to their small down payment. I mean, their biggest down payment really is going through our program and to participate in the renovation of their house or another house for about 200 hours. So as the family and the project come together, we have relationships with local banks. We have some below market interest programs that we can access. Those often are the programs that we work with. Despite the low down payment, there's no PMI, which certainly helps these buyers. And then we access down payment assistance, as Teresa kind of alluded to. I mean, certainly get a lot from MISTA. We get some through the county, through HUD. Local banks, Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis has a program that we access in the spring. So all those things come together, and we have a new Habitat homeowner. They have a really well renovated home. I mean, we're really replacing all the systems, new roof, electrical. I mean, we really try to set up the families to be successful. And another aspect of our deep renovation work is energy efficiency. The houses that we renovate, our families, we've modeled, and they save probably $50 a month in utilities compared to what the family prior to them was paying. So when you're talking about families of low income, certainly, that extra $600 can really make a big difference. So all those things kind of come together, and we're able to sell homes to these new Habitat families. And then we've been partners certainly up until the sale, and we continue to be partners thereafter, supporting them in terms of warranty work or other things that they may need. So it's really kind of a long-term relationship, and it works out very well.
So Rob, can you tell us a little bit more about the families that you work with, and where they're buying, and maybe what it takes for them to kind of be ready, Habitat ready to sort of start doing sweat habit equity and get into their house?
Sure. We've over the years had different ways of recruiting families. Like I say, we've been around for 30 plus years, sold over 250 homes. I mean, these days, it's most often our current homeowners are our best recruiters of new families. So we have these families often, let's say, support services at the university, and other roles throughout our community, and they're able to, save up the modest down payment. It's a real commitment when you think about, these families of low income. Maybe they're working 2 jobs, or there's just a single parent household. So their investment of 200 hours of sweat equity, which takes maybe 6 to 9 months, working usually on a weekend, but if their schedule allows, maybe something on a Thursday, Friday. But they have this this goal to be homeowners. The people that we work with most often are first-time home buyers. Also very often that they're the first home buyers in their families. So they really don't have the legacy and the situation that many people have, having grown up in their own home, where they learn to do some simple maintenance or enjoy the benefits of having your own yard. So it's just a different as a different group of people. But again, we try to, through our classes and through our sweat equity activities, try to prepare them to be successful homeowners. So again, things around their finances and certainly around home maintenance and things like that, just to really try to set them up. And we'd be more mindful in the renovation of the properties as well, trying to make them successful. So to the extent that we can make improvements to the home to make it more sustainable for the family, that's something that we'll focus on as well.
So Rob, I know that Habitat has done a lot of work more on the east side of the county. What will it take for Habitat to be able to be more active in the Ann Arbor market? Because I know it's pretty pricey. So what are the challenges, I think, for Habitat in particular in Ann Arbor?
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, if throughout Washington County, the housing prices have gone up. But in Ann Arbor, Teresa looked at the median home value. I took the 100 lowest transactions last year, home sales in Ann Arbor, the city of Ann Arbor. I eliminated maybe the bottom 25 because I'd seen many of those, and those certainly aren't livable. But the median price from that batch of 75 homes is about $256,000. So in Ann Arbor, that translates into $6,500 of property tax, and with a modest payment for their homeowners insurance. These families, like a 60% AMI family, let's say a family of 4, their maximum mortgage is only $205,000. So, they're really, they're still $50,000 or more away from being able to, afford one of these houses in our, the lowest decile of sales in the city. So just accessing, accessing those properties is difficult for families of low income. Of course, they don't have the ability to be, they're not a cash buyer, like perhaps a landlord might be, or, a family that's been more involved in home ownership or has had the opportunity to buy properties before and have some, perhaps some wealth built up. But I mean, I think the real challenge is, is the property tax, and that's the combination of the sales price and the millage. So I know in the city of Ann Arbor, there's a real focus when we talk about affordability to cap it at 60% of AMI. I think the Housing Trust Fund is, that's one of its, that's its maximum. But I mean, I really think that, we should consider 80% of AMI. That's not really, I mean, it's still considered low moderate income from HUD's standpoint, and really want to, that might open up the market to perhaps a few more families, but again, want to be able to help them access down payment assistance. Like I said, the quality of the houses that are in this lower bracket, they're going to need a lot of work over time. And again, these are first-time home buyers. they don't have the extra resources to either do the work. They may have not had the experience to figure out how to do it themselves. So it's, a lot of challenges around that. I mean, again, in the Habitat model where we're able to do the deep renovation really helped to set the family to be successful. So even if we bought, a house for $250,000 and did a pretty good rehab on it to, make it more sustainable for the family, again, the sales price is just going to put it out of reach from, most families that we're talking about. And in general, we've, as Teresa said, the bulk of our work recently has been in the eastern part of the county, particularly Ypsilanti Township. But I mean, our first work was here on the west side of Ann Arbor. We've also done quite a few renovations over the last 10, 12 years, but over time, this just continues to be, more and more difficult to find a buyer and a home and put them together to have it work. It's just the affordability it puts it out of reach of the families. And, as part of our Habitat model, we're selling for the appraised value. So we can't really get around that in terms of, trying to lower the sales price. And the sales price, of course, is what determines the taxes. So even if the family is fortunate enough to get a substantial grant or down payment assistance, it's still that high level sales price is what drives property tax.
Right. And what I think I might do is use this as a segue to go over to Wanisha and really kind of focus on those buyers, unless you want to add anything else. Otherwise, we're going to do questions at the very end. So anything else, Rob, before we go over to Wanisha?
I mean, the one thing that you had mentioned was, the whole notion of wealth transfer, wealth creation, going generation to generation. We see this often that the families, there is no trust or no estate at the end, and probate can be lengthy. But there are things, and I'm not a real estate attorney, but I think there's something called the Ladybird deed, where upon death of the owner, it automatically transfers to to whomever they put on the deed. So it's not a joint ownership during the person's lifetime, but at the when they pass, it would automatically transfer to someone else, whether they're in their family or not. So there may be some things like that we could, research and access to be able to help people to really, transfer that wealth from one generation to another.
I love that. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm just going to switch over to Wanisha Brand from the Housing Commission. And Wanisha, maybe you can start with an overview of Homeownership Voucher Program.
Yeah, sure. So the Ann Arbor Housing Commission has participated in the homeownership for several decades. However, the Housing Choice Voucher homeownership program was reignited around 2010. We partner with a number of agencies throughout the community to help our families become home buyer ready. So what happens with the Housing Choice Voucher homeownership program is it's very similar to our rental program. So in the rental program, the participants locate a unit through a private landlord, and they pay 30% of their income towards the rent, and the Housing Commission picks up the balance, making their payment directly to the landlord for the monthly rent. On the homeownership program, it works very similar. However, instead of the Housing Commission making a payment towards the rent, we actually make a payment towards the mortgage. Generally, what happens is families have to meet one of two criteria. If the family is not elderly or not disabled, then they are required to meet a wage, income, and employment requirement. So all non-elderly, non-disabled households have to maintain employment to continue participation on the homeownership program. Those individuals that are elderly or disabled, they do not have to meet a work requirement. However, there is a minimum income guideline that is set for both categories of program participants. Once the family is receives certification in home buyer education, they are provided with their estimated voucher numbers, and that voucher is then provided to a private lender. The participant is responsible for securing their own mortgage. They have the choice of going to any lender that they choose. We work very closely with Habitat for Humanity. We've also had lenders from Level 1 Bank to Old National. Once the participants find the home that they're looking, that they're interested in, they'll place an offer. That offer is accepted. The Housing Commission will conduct an HQS inspection on the home. And as long as everything passes, then the family can move forward with the closing. We do require that our families, if they are not purchasing a Habitat home, we do require that our families have at least 1% of the cost of the home, the purchase price of the home. We require that they have at least 1% out of pocket that goes towards the purchase of the home. So that 1% can be used for closing costs, securing the homeowner's insurance, paying for private inspection, as well as down payment. The Housing Choice Voucher can be used in combination with various mortgage products. It is not allowed for balloon or adjustable interest rate loans. However, we've had some participants that have purchased homes using USDA funds, as I mentioned, Habitat funds, and they also can combine the voucher with down payment assistance program. Once the family closes on the home, then we essentially make our monthly payment to the family. And the family is then responsible for making their monthly mortgage contribution. And what I like to tell our families is, the paperwork part of the process with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission is peanuts compared to the paperwork process you're going to go through with the lender. So in a nutshell, that's how the program is formulated.
Great. My next question for you is, this seems like a pretty unique program that's going to work for some, but not all. So who does it work for, and how well does it work?
Well, as I mentioned, there is an income and wage requirement. So it can work for all of our participants. The challenge that our participants face really is the unique Ann Arbor market, Washtenaw County market. The voucher is used in combination with the family's household income, which really increases their buying power. However, they are still subjected to the income guidelines of the Housing Choice Voucher program. So the Housing Choice Voucher program is, we go by the 50% area median income. So at the point that a voucher participant is their household income exceeds that 50%, then they're no longer eligible for voucher assistance. So there's a sweet spot, right, that the families have to, that they really have to meet to take full advantage of the program. And again, we have seen a number of our participants through partnership with Web and Habitat for Humanity and MSU Extension. They've been very well prepared for home ownership. However, they continue to face the challenge of finding a home that meets their desire and their family size.
Which leads to my next question, are the challenges and limitations of this program.
Yeah, the challenges and limitations. One of the things that is, again, with the voucher program having the 50% area median income, that is one of the most significant challenges of the voucher program. Because in the Ann Arbor market, a family really needs to have a higher income in addition to the voucher, so they're not priced out of the market. As you know, and you mentioned earlier, Teresa, there's the stock, right? So the low income buyers are always priced out.
So I'm looking at this great slide deck where you provided all these kind of great facts on the program. And I was really surprised that everyone's in 48198 and not even 48197. So they're really, well, east of the river, that's what it is. But is everyone in a 3-bedroom? Is that just kind of like the preferred size based on you're seeing people that at least have one kid or something like that?
That is the state. So the majority of our program participants are in 3 bedrooms. These numbers here are averages. And I think that it's also a really good idea because with the rental program, the bedroom size of the unit is extremely important when it comes to calculating the amount of voucher assistance. However, that formula is slightly different for the home ownership program. The families are not necessarily restricted from only purchasing a home that is within the voucher size that has been allocated to them. In our rental program, families are restricted from spending more than 40% of their household income towards the housing costs. In the home ownership program, that ruling does not apply. So that gives them just a little bit more wiggle room in their selection in the types of home that they desire.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Manisha, before we go on? Otherwise, I'm sure we'll have questions at the end for you.
No, I don't.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on now. We're going to switch gears a little bit and go over to the long-term affordability sort of models. And we're going to start off, well, here's a little bit about shared equity models. This is from the National League of Cities. And just kind of a reminder about generally how they work. There's going to be some investment to make the home affordable for purchase, right? And so this can happen in a couple different ways, and we're going to hear some of those examples. In return for being able to buy or, have a share of a home at a below market value, there's going to be a limit on the sort of proceeds at the point of sale, right? This is often done through a kind of a formula that limits the amount of equity that you can have at the point of sale. So it does provide long-term affordability. It does not allow for the same kind of wealth creation that we would see if you're purchasing the home and kind of gaining wealth from the home itself. However, there is the ability to potentially save, especially if you think about this in comparison with market rate rental housing, which Vince will be talking about here in just a minute. But we're going to start off with Michelle and the Limited Equity Housing Cooperative. So why don't you give us an overview and a little bit of history on Arrowwood first off? And you're muted still, Michelle.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you. I don't know how far you want me to go back in history, but I will give you just an overview of Arrowwood. Used to be Pontiac Heights, and somewhere along the line it established as changed the name to Arrowwood Hills Cooperative. The community has been around since the 1970s, established in the 1970s, conducive of 350 units, over 44 acres of land. And it is a limited equity housing cooperative. And what that essentially means is that the members are shared owners in a development, which is Arrowwood Cooperatives. And they do not own any real estate. They don't own the land or the dwelling. They just have use of the dwelling. Upon how the cooperative formula works is that a person pays a membership fee to move in. And usually we have 1 to 4 bedroom units available. And we have like a set fee scale for over a period of 10 to 20 years that we charge for a membership fee. And whatever that, just say for instance, if it's a 2-bedroom charge for the membership, right now our membership fees for 2 bedrooms are around a little over 9,000, give or take a little. And that person would essentially pay that membership fee to move in, plus their prorated monthly carrying charge. We don't have rent. We call it carrying charges, and that will give them the opportunity to move into a available unit. If a person does not have all the membership fee, we do offer a equity loan. Um, Usually the amount is established by the board of directors, and right now we're doing anywhere between 3,500 to 4,500 if a person has uh, at least $5,000 of that membership fee. A person is able to apply for a loan to move in, and there's certain criteria that they have to meet. We don't weigh heavily on the credit aspect of it, but we do criminal background check. The um, we also make sure that they're able to afford to pay the monthly carrying charges, and so we do employment verification and look into their rental history and things of that nature to qualify to utilize one of our units. We also have, out of the 350 units that we do have an affordability component in our community, which 56 of our units are Section 8 homes, not also the rest of market rate. And so that we get funding from um, HUD to offer these units, 56 of our units, to members that are below a income um, median, so that they are able to live comfortably in the units. Uh, and usually that is, we have a member selection plan that is governed by the entire community, and you have to meet family composition to move into those units, whether it's market rate or if you're on a Section 8 program, you still have to meet that same family composition. Where if you're an individual and you can only purchase a 1 bedroom, 2 or more in a 2 bedroom, and so on and so forth. That's part of our criteria in order to move into the community. Um, we also have a model where we are governed by a board of directors, and that's usually 5 members that actually live in the community. They run for office, and if elected, they sit on our board to help govern our policies and procedures for the community. Um, we do have I'm the site manager, so I run the day-to-day operations, but we also have a managing agent that also assists in managing the finances in the day-to-day operations as well. Um, and so we kind of run as a community like that. The involvement that the community has, the members has, as a lot of them may fill positions on subcommittees that help with different things around the community. Like we have a LACE, a committee where they oversee different things being upgraded around the community, educating the members on the cooperative living, um, collaborating on getting new ideas for enhancing the community, and making sure that members have things available to them as a co-op that they normally wouldn't have available to them individually. But as a co-op, they try to come together and think of new ideas, and to help the community continue to be self-sustaining, whether it be for food, education, clothing. Like we have a food pantry in our community center. So members are able to come and get food daily by appointment. And we also have a regular, um, every month, a food gathering day that members are able to come get bulk food, and it really helps the community to continue to be self-sustaining, especially in a time like this where COVID is cause people to be, struggle so much. Is it very helpful to live in a cooperative where you can provide some of the basic needs of your members, so that they can continue to live a quality life while we're going through such a time as a, with a pandemic. So that's one of the wonderful things about living in a cooperative. Um, the members look out for one another, and the community itself, um, comes together to really embrace, the life of everybody that lives here, whether you're your blood relatives or not. They kind of come together and help one another with food, transportation, basic essentials that they need. So it's a wonderful model to be a part of, because that's one of the main reasons why cooperatives were created, to allow for people to afford to live in places that they wouldn't otherwise be able to live in, such as Ann Arbor. It's a wonderful place and community, but it's expensive. But we have living in a cooperative it makes it very affordable. For instance, our 1 bedrooms are $422, our 2 bedrooms $510, 3 bedrooms $556, and our 4 bedrooms are $612. So you cannot go anywhere that I can think of in Ann Arbor and live comfortably every month. So it makes it great to be able to live in a cooperative and be a part of that type of housing model.
Well, two of my first questions for you. Well, okay, three. One, do you live there also, or just professional staff?
I do not live here yet.
Okay, fair enough. How incredibly long is that wait list? That's what I would love to know.
We have a very extensive wait list that we probably close to 300 names.
Wow.
Or better.
And how long do people stay there? Is there a lot of movement through the units that people stay for a while, save money and move on, or are they there a long time?
The beautiful thing I love about Arrowwood, and I've been in this industry for 30 something years, and the beautiful thing about Arrowwood is that this place is a home. People seem to love it. I love it. And people stay. We have people who have been here 50 years, 30 years, 40 years, 25 years, and multiple generations live here as well. So it makes me proud to be the manager right now for a community that is so family oriented, because I'm a family person and I love community. I've always loved being a part of communities all my life. So it makes it a joy and a pleasure to even work here as the manager. It's wonderful.
Well, it sounds like it's perfect, but are there any challenges or limitations to this model?
I would love to say things are perfect, but no place is perfect. There are some challenges that, like any other place that we face, especially during this pandemic time. People struggle and have lost jobs and resources, and it makes it difficult for people to maintain a household, maintain paying their monthly carrying charges. But one of the great things about a cooperative, we're still able to stay afloat and still maintain our a good standing as far as being able to continue to operate our community um, with less of a impact, because we have the affordable component, which is the guaranteed income from the Section 8 program. It's like, we get $500,000 from that. And then we still have those members who continue to pay, even though they're struggling. They try to put forth a great effort to continue to pay, because they know that the community is dependent on their part of the investment to continue to keep the operation going. So there are challenges, but we seem to be doing okay through it all. I can't hear you.
That was my bad. One more question. You mentioned that the board of directors is made up of your members. Do you ever have problems recruiting people for the board or the committees you were talking about earlier? What's that like?
Um, Great question. We do. I think part of it. I think a part of it is maybe perhaps a lot of people don't understand how important it is to participate. Um, as a member in a cooperative, we do have our challenges with people having the time or not really understanding or thinking that you have to have these you know all these credentials just to be a part of the board when that's not the case. It's the board consists of all the members that live here. You have an invested interest, and so it's something that I like to personally work to help members to be more comfortable with participating. And I think it's just a level of comfort as well. We do have a community, like I said, have a lot of people that have lived here a long time. So some people are intimidated by computers and things of that nature. So it's a combination of things that keep people from participating. But I think that's going to change in a little bit here.
That sounds great. Well, thank you, Michelle. I'm sure we're going to have questions for you, including how do we get more, but we'll wait for later.
Okay.
And we're going to move on to Vince and talk a little bit more about community land trusts. So do you want to just give us an overview and tell us what community land trusts are and maybe a couple examples or models of it?
Sure. So, well, first of all, community land trusts are nonprofit organizations. They typically qualify for a 501c3 tax exemption from the IRS. So a CLT is usually governed by the board of CLT residents, community residents, and also public representatives. So this kind of classic tripartite board that is kind of behind the organizational structure of CLTs. The CLTs provide lasting community assets and home ownership opportunities with lasting affordability for families and communities. So this comes from the definition from our website, but in general, the definition really speaks to the fact that the CLT is not just about the homeownership with lasting affordability. CLTs develop rural and urban agricultural projects. They develop commercial spaces to serve local communities. They can develop other affordable housing types, including rental units, including co-ops, including deed-restricted housing, includes lease to purchase type of units. So there's a lot of different ways ACLT can do. They also can conserve land or urban green spaces. So now, for the lasting affordable homeownership model used by CLTs, it's what we call it more broadly shared equity homeship, which was shown on the previous deck. It's typically, as shown here on this slide, it typically uses ground lease, which basically the CLT or the nonprofit organization owns the land, and then homeowners own the property or the building on top of the land. So this dual homeownership structure is a classic model for CLT. It's also common for CLTs to use, like I said, deed restrictions, especially in the case of condominium developments. So kind of getting me back to the shared equity homeownership slide, no matter what it is the idea behind it is similar. No matter what type of homeownership units or either ground lease or deed restriction, it essentially the homes will be sold, unlike the habitat model, the typical habitat model. The homes will be sold below market rate price, and to make the homes affordable. In return, the household agrees to resell the price below its then market value, so it remains affordable to the subsequent lower income home buyers. The original homeowner builds wealth from two ways. One is to paying down the mortgage, and they will get the entire principal and the mortgage payment when they live. The second part is they will share a portion of the home increasing value over time when they live in a residence. So those two added together will be the equity that they get after they leave the model. So that's a nutshell of what a CLT is.
Thanks, Dale. I know you've been doing a lot of research on sort of the effectiveness in this model and how it works and maybe any limitations. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that and why people are so interested in the community land trust model?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it as a 30,000 feet because Ground Solutions Network is a national membership organization. We are tracking CLTs. One thing that I'm doing is to conduct a national census on CLT. So we're trying to conduct a long survey asking all the elements of what CLT looks like. So in a year, I have a better answer to your question. But for now, I think speaking of CLT benefits to households, I think there are generally two aspects. One is this affordable housing provision, and the second aspect is what we call it community control. And the word behind the community control is stewardship, and I can talk a little bit more about it. So in terms of the affordable housing provision, I think the key is that the CLTs increase access to successful homeownership with significantly lower purchase price. And we're talking about on average 31. Typical, like a medium subsidy to a CLT home is between 30 to 35%. So the price is 30 to 35% lower than the market rate. And because of that much significantly lower purchase price, which leads to smaller down payments. It leads to lower credit score requirements. There will be no mortgage insurance, and there will be a very much affordable monthly housing payments. So that's one aspect of affordability. The second aspect, which I touched earlier, is the wealth building. So a recent study I did is to compare a subset of CLTs across the nation. I think there are like 40 or 45 CLTs. And we compare the homeowners living in those CLTs for years and calculate the wealth they gain through the home owning. And we compare that with the University of Michigan's PSID data. For a comparable set of renters as well as homeowners. So what we found is that for the similar renters and owners, so the CLTs, they on average, they will gain $1,700 annually from owning the home, versus for a similar renter, they will only gain $100 per year during same period of time, and with a similar income, and location, all that. The homeowners generate on average about $2,000 per year. So I'm talking about market rate homeowners. They are higher than the CLT homeowners, but when we look at compared it by two samples, they are not significant, like statistically significant. So that's what I found, and I think one thing to stress is that like we're not really like what we really to think about is this model provides homeownership access and hope people keep in those homes for those households who otherwise will not be able to obtain homeownership. So really comparing households or homeowners with CLT homeowners with renters is the way that we should compare to. So that's the second. And then quickly, the third one is I think which illustrates the model is like it preserves affordability for not only one home buyer, it's the generations of home buyer, just because with one-time public investment and the resale restrictions, CLT homes remain affordable over time.
So I didn't run this question by you before because I didn't think about it till tonight, and you may not have it from your research yet, but one of the thoughts about sort of the kind of the long-term affordability is, have there been a lot of successful examples, or are there any challenges with nonprofits sort of maintaining their status and or lasting for a long period of time? I know the city, for example, the city of Ann Arbor, when they're doing affordable rental units, they're trying to put a 99-year sort of restriction on those properties or affordability agreement. So are community land trusts generally successful in providing very long-term affordability? So 20, 30, 40, 99 years, I guess.
Yeah, so that's a good question. The CLT definitely cannot operate within a vacuum. It has to be compliant with this local and state policy landscape and policy requirements. And part of the challenges is that. But I think there's various ways of doing that. And then usually we call it permanent affordability with affordable housing with lasting affordability. And the way how to do it, potentially, if there's a local and state requirement, say 50 years, then they'll put it for 50 years. But within that time period, the affordable term will restart upon resale or something. So there are different ways to keep it affordable, even though there's such requirements. So yes, so there's a way, but the idea behind it is always to keep it affordable.
All right, sounds good. I know there's going to be questions, but I'm going to go through one more content area and then we'll be able to field all the questions, I'm sure. And Vince just mentioned this, that one of the tools, whether it's community land trusts or other things that allows for long-term affordability, are deed restrictions or covenant deeds. And there are actually two examples, at least, in play right now that OCD manages on behalf of the city of Ann Arbor. And one is the Stone School condos, where about half of the condos there are affordable due to the use of home investment partnership funds. And then Ashley Muse, which also, I believe, received some funding a while ago. That is another condo. So in these cases, the funding triggered the deed restriction. And the way it works is that basically there's limits on new buyers. So the new buyers have to be income eligible up to that 60 or 80% AMI. They varied in the deeds for these. And then the resale is limited based on a formula. And each of these, it's fascinating because they're different. So Stone School and Ashley Muse actually use totally different indices for how they calculate it. But it does, the appreciation is very similar. It's a very small amount of appreciation that's experienced by the homeowner now selling their condo to the next buyer. So a couple of things that we've learned over this experience on our end and sort of managing it, I will say, and it's kind of an ongoing challenge, I imagine, whether it's a cooperative model or a condo association, is sort of that participation in the running of a condo association in the case of these, or potentially a cooperative board, and making sure people stay engaged in the long term over the course of, 10, 15, 20 years. The other thing with Stone School in particular, it was not intended to be a mixed income property. It was a result of a slowdown in the construction. So there was in how it was structured. In the actual deed, it said if they weren't built in a certain amount of time, they would go market rate. So that's why about half are affordable and about half are market rate. But it's really impacted the community in some ways, where folks who bought in the affordable units had saw their neighbors who bought a market rate unit see appreciation and could benefit for the increased sales price after they kept them, and the market went up so dramatically in the last 10 years. And it's made a little bit of tension. Also, there was no variation in the amount of condo fees. So even if you're a market rate or affordable, you're paying the same amounts. And then there are also issues with collection of the fees. So then there was deferred maintenance. So these are not uncommon to other condo associations. So I want to call that out, that there are often challenges sometimes with long-term maintenance within some of these, whether it's a condo association again or a cooperative. But I just want to note some of those things along the long term. And I know there are some good examples about how to structure condo fees differently. I'm sure Vince knows them off the top of his head, that so they can sort of adjust based on maybe the size of the unit or different things that would sort of allow for folks with lower incomes to be maybe contributing less, but it's more equitable overall. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and leave it right there for all the questions you've been storing up. And Foster, if you want to take it away.
Sure. So circling back to Rob, there was a question that I might have answered on your behalf, but wanted to double check with you. The question was, oh, my mouse. Sort of speaking to the total number over a period of time of housing that have been developed for Habitat or through Habitat for Humanity or by Habitat for Humanity in Washtenaw. And I believe you said over 250 houses over the course of 30 years. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And I didn't hear what portion of those are within Ann Arbor.
I would say that maybe 10%.
Okay. And then we had another question. So the question is for Vince, but also all the panelists, is whether or not you've reviewed the Equitable Ann Arbor Land Trust business model, and if you have any feedback for the Equitable Ann Arbor Land Trust business model.
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with Equitable Ann Arbor Land Trust business model, but happy to hear any thoughts or ideas from others. But I do want to point it out. I talked to Teresa a couple of days ago for this when she mentioned about Ann Arbor. Again, I'm not familiar with the city, but immediately that connects to where I graduated, which is University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. It's a city with very similar size public school, and there's a lot of similar situations about tax, economic development, residential segregation, and all that. So they do have established a CLT about 4 years ago. I don't think they have any units yet. They have, I know that because I'm going to give a lecture about CLT in a couple of weeks for University of Florida. I know they invited one of the former board members to talk about the challenges and the barriers they have for that Gainesville CLT. So I'm happy to connect you to the right person if you want to share or learn more of their newly adopted model.
Thank you. And Paul, you have a question? Oh, Teresa. Sorry, Paul, hold a second.
Just to respond about the land trust, I spoke with Sarah Lorenz, who is I think the main staff for the land trust, and she actually said that they're going to be kind of changing how they describe their role as more of a broker for affordable housing, whether it's home ownership or rental. And so I think that makes more sense as how I read their business model, that they weren't going to be sort of owning the land and doing the land lease and all the things that Vince described, but yet that they still want to be a part of supporting the development and some matchmaking related to projects that would encourage affordable development. So for what it's worth.
Paul?
Foster, I have questions for several of the panelists. You want me to do them one at a time, or what was your preference?
Why don't you start with one, and then we'll see if other people have questions, and then we'll circle back to your second, and I will also take turns with you.
Okay, great. My first question is for Rob, and I was just wondering what kind of, if any, statistics you keep on retention. In other words, how long do the typical families stay in their houses? How much turnover there is? How much success are the folks that buy from them if they're sold, people that, you know, are in a similar socioeconomic status and so forth?
I mean, we've had really great success. I mean, you can imagine, you know, we're working with families of lower income. So from time to time, there is a situation where, you know, the family needs to sell their home and move on. But I mean, we've really had some, you know, being around now over 30 years, we've had quite a number of families who have paid off their mortgage. Certainly the ones that were in Ann Arbor early, I mean, built, really great wealth over time. So it's, again, trying to be is, we're trying to work with a group of families that can be challenging, but to the extent that, like I say, been a couple foreclosures along the way, but it's really, the families have really done well. And I think that a lot of it has to do with, their preparation to be homeowners and the fact that the homes that they purchase are, of good quality and don't require a lot of, maintenance, certainly early in the process.
We have a question from Sean White in the audience. Has the city explored apartment to condo conversion strategies? And if not, does the city have a point of view on those strategies?
Jennifer, do you have anything on that question?
No and no.
Does Lurie Terrace count?
No, I mean, I can't represent the whole city when we have a point saying that we have a point of view on that. I can't, I'm just an employee of the city. But we have not explored doing rental to condo.
Would that be rental? I guess this is is the term apartment to condo conversion a standard issue like approach?
I've seen that happen where investors have come in and bought apartment complexes and then renovated them and turned them into condos because there's greater wealth to be generated for the developer that way. So I've seen that happen in a few apartment complexes in Ann Arbor. We did used to have a lease to own program. We had 50 homes, single family homes about 40 plus years ago that we did as lease to own as a HUD program. So it was HUD subsidized on the front end on the development. We have one house left that has the 3 different families who have lived there have not been able to secure a mortgage to buy the house. But that's the extent of the work that we have done on that.
I had a quick question. I think, I imagine it's a quick question for Ms. Brand. You were saying that a good portion of the families that you work with, or at one point you said, if they're not Habitat for Humanity houses, then this is the path we go down. And I might have missed it, but about what portion of people using the program are Habitat to Humanity houses versus another, a mortgage on the market?
About 50%.
Okay.
50% of our homeowners have Habitat for Humanity.
Cool. Paul, did anybody else have a question who's not Paul? Oh, Amanda. Sorry, Paul.
I'll try not to take it personally, but
You'll be next.
Floor to Amanda.
Just a follow-up for Wanisha. My question was around what happens if a family in the HCV homeownership program loses income or employment.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the great benefits of the voucher program is they have that the voucher is a safety net. So again, as I mentioned, those individuals who are not elderly or disabled, they must meet a work requirement, but we have it built into our policy that they have a window of time to regain or reestablish their employment. So again, the homeownership works very, very similar to the rental program, whereas if the family's income decreases, the voucher increases to account for that difference.
So for a period of time, the Housing Commission could be paying 100% of the mortgage then, if there's a dip in income.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I think it's also really important to mention that the voucher does cover the mortgage, the property taxes, as well as insurance, including any condo fees, if that's applicable.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? I'm actually more interested in the opposite side of it, what about the income increase? I did see that on the slides. It started with about $15,000, and over years become to 35 years. So what is the over the eligibility? I know it's pretty strict from the rental side, but from the homeowner side, because which one way is actually you're promoting upward mobility. So what is the requirement there?
Yeah, actually, the criteria is the same for both the rental program as well as the home ownership program in terms of the income guidelines. Again, it's 50% AMI. For the rental program, if a person, if their income increases to a point where we're no longer paying any subsidy, they have basically a 6-month grace period for their circumstances to change. They report it back to us, and they're essentially reinstated to the program. Homeownership is very similar. However, the homeownership participant has a 1-year grace period. Right now, we actually were approved by HUD to have an additional 1-year grace period for our homeowners, our homeownership program participants. So as of right now, as a result of COVID, those families, if they become zero HAP assisted, they essentially have a 2-year grace period for their circumstances to change to be reinstated to the program.
Paul, you're up.
My next question is for Michelle. As I understand it, nearly all the co-ops in the county or in the area had HUD mortgages that matured, and almost all of them at least faced, if not decided upon condo conversion. And I was wondering if, how's that worked in Arrowwood? I mean, I assume you don't have a HUD mortgage anymore, and if not, were you able to refinance with some other situation, and did you have to have a conversion vote?
How many questions was that?
Just a couple.
At some point, we did. You're correct that in 2010, prior to my time, we no longer have a mortgage, as far as a HUD mortgage, but we are currently undergoing a major renovation that we did get did a refinance for the project alone. Again, as this is a cooperative, so the members are share owners. So I don't foresee any future of the condo conversion, because the members would have the say so in that being done. Not one individual, because everybody collectively own the community as equal share owners, and it would have to be more than a 55% vote on that. It may be around 55% for if members were interested in doing that, but I don't see that in the foreseeable future at this time. What was the other part of your question? You had like several.
Well, I mean, I was just wondering if your HUD mortgage must have matured at some point, and so was there a vote at that time, or?
It was paid off in 2010.
And they did vote, actually. So
Yeah.
Arrowwood voted, Forest Hills and University Townhomes all voted to stay as limited equity co-ops. Their mortgages kind of ended all at the same time. Colonial Square voted to turn into a market rate co-op. So they all are still members. They all still own have a membership, and they essentially can sell their unit kind of like a condo and get whatever the market will bear for the sale of that unit. So when they first converted, people were getting like $160,000 for the sale of their unit. I haven't looked recently at what those are. And then there's Pine Lake, I think is what it's called, off of Packard, that also went market rate co-op. Well, like Michelle said, the members all could vote, to go one way or the other.
Yeah, sure. No, I understand that. I just didn't know what had happened specifically at Arrowwood.
I'm going to follow up on Paul's question with something I think we've talked about in this body before, but for the sake of an education seminar and the recording and sort of addressing some questions that have come up in previous sessions. So Arrowwood, and it sounds like if all those other mortgages matured around the same time, then probably all of those other co-ops as well, used funds to build. Are the funds that helped build Arrowwood still available for building new cooperative housing? And if they are, is it tenable to use those funds in the Ann Arbor housing market to build new cooperatives?
That is a question that I cannot answer at the moment. I don't foresee that because Arrowwood is just, a community of its own, and we, again, the members would have to decide on something like that as a collective, and there would be a lot of conversations about, purchasing the land, obviously. Although we have 44 acres here, there's just no more room to develop here. We have the park surrounding us and everything. But that's an interesting question to do a little research on and ask a few more questions here.
I can add to that too. Back when, so the dates that Arrowwood and University Townhomes and those places were built, the co-ops were built, was the same time that the public housing, the most of the public housing was built, and we all used this HUD subsidized financing, essentially to do that kind of construction that allowed us to, have the lower cost for them, for the members, and for us, for our renters. But that funding does not exist anymore. There isn't that kind of financing available, but co-ops are actually a type of entity that can apply for low-income housing tax credits. I don't know if that's ever happened in the state of Michigan. I don't know of others that have done that, but that would be the number one place where we get subsidies for rental, and it is a source that you could apply for co-ops as well.
Paul, did you have more questions on your list?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. I saw Lynn's hand. So get the one you were going to ask next, and I'll go to Lynn real quick, okay?
Sure.
With this, I mean, if we're talking about trying to find financing to have more communities like Arrowwood around, would this be where a CDFI would be able to provide for that? Maybe that's is that a role that a CDFI can play?
You really love CDFIs, Lynn. What's the CDFI you have in mind?
I'm really obsessed with them. I'm trying to find ways how do we move capital to where it's most needed, and if it's not going to be through the public sector, maybe it's through
I mean, the types of programs that different CDFIs have, they change over time, like any of the different government programs and private programs. I haven't personally researched it for a co-op model, but what I've seen of the CDFI programs is they're really geared toward communities that have been disinvested in, which we don't. Every time I've tried to use the CDFI funding, I haven't been able to make the project work because we're a wealthy community. So it would be harder, I think, but maybe not impossible. It's hard to know.
I mean, I think they're supposed to be meeting the needs of an underserved community that's underserved by traditional banking, right? So if current traditional banking or bankers in the community aren't stepping up, even if we're a wealthy community, doesn't that kind of open the door for that? I don't know. Are we just okay?
I haven't researched that specifically for co-ops, but somebody sure could.
That would be interesting. I'd like to find that information out as well.
All right, Paul.
This question is for Vince. There's probably no reason you would know this, but that we actually did attempt a community land trust some years ago in Washtenaw, and it foundered for a variety of reasons. But my impression is that one big reason was the absence of available land. And so I'm just curious whether you think it's accurate to say that CLTs would work best in places like Detroit where there's a lot of vacant land, whereas that's not a problem or a situation that we have so much here in Washtenaw?
It's a great question. I think there are several ways that you could think about acquiring land. One is like, for instance, COVID distressed homeowners, and we are exploring ways to help distressed homeowners stay in the property and potentially convert their homes to a CLT model, so that homes can stay long term. So like we're helping that Berkeley homeowner, but we're also helping to keep that property in the long run. So that's one thing that we are exploring as a national organization. There is also a way between, I don't know if there's land banks in the city or the local governments. So another way we are really exploring is the partnership between land banks and the CLTs. And we're exploring a cohort in Portland, in Houston, and in Atlanta. So there are just like several big things, but of course there's other ways to think for it.
I'm going to follow up with another question for you, Vince. I looked into community land trusts when I first joined HHSAB. We had some questions about it. I did some homework. And one thing that I learned from that, which may or may not be accurate. So the question is this true? That when tying houses on a community land trust that have affordability restrictions, so for example, you can't sell it necessarily at market rate to sort of maintain affordability through the sales of that home, then those houses are primarily beneficial for two populations of people. One would be seniors who need like housing stability through this sounds terrible, through the end of their life, but like, to age in place. And then young families who need a house to invest in and get some equity and then be able to sell it, maybe not at a massive profit, but then move into a house where they could then be working in the marketplace. And the second thing that I was understanding of affordable community land trusts was that one key factor in the continued success is the availability of some sort of a centralized management or support agency to help with things like replacing a roof or the kind of big expenses that individuals might not, who are eligible for those homes, might not have in an emergency or something like that. So are those two things that I have held in my brain about affordable community land trusts accurate? And if they aren't, can you correct me?
I cannot correct you. I think there's a lot of good things in here. One is that we did research, we did study, we do see CLTs serve a wide variety of households, not only seniors. They tend to be younger and they tend to stay. So there's two aspects, two benefits of living in CLTs in terms of residential mobility. One is that it keeps them stable. So they tend to have much lower mortgage foreclosure rate. They tend to have much lower delinquency rate, even in the peak of foreclosure crisis. There's a study to prove that. They tend to stay in CLT homes longer, than they tend to move less frequently. But when they move, they have about the same reasons. We did ask them in a post-leaving survey why you move, where you move to. So we know where they move to, we know why they move, and they tend to be similar to other homeowners and renters. When they move, majority of them, I'm talking about 60% of them, went ahead to purchase market-based housing. So that's a good aspect in terms of upward mobility. We do see a wide range of race, ethnicity, age, household structure in terms of moving to this model. So that's hopefully answer your first question. The second one, I promised I want to talk about the stewardship aspect of it, but I forgot when I was talking about it. So here it is. It's I think similar to what Michelle said, it's really a sense of community. It's the sense of community was really behind this organizational structure. First of all, they have this membership structure. The board is a tripartite board. It's a combination of CLT residents, the community residents, and also as public representatives together in here. So there's that. There's in some larger CLTs, there's pre-purchase consulting, there's post-purchase services, there's all sorts of non-residential activities that comes with those residential portfolio to help homeowners not obtain access to homeownership, but also stay and sustain in those homeownership. There is a lot of, I think I also see CLT as a fabricate in a more local nonprofit community. And we see a lot of collaborations between CLT as a lot of other local nonprofit organizations. And because of that, they are promoting this neighborhood stability. And I see a lot of connections these days, increasingly with Rob's organization in the Habitat and Humanities place. There's about a dozen of Habitat, actually they own a CLT program across the nation. There's increasingly Habitat in collaboration with CLTs and develop shared equity homeownership opportunities for local communities. So there's a lot, but get back to it, stewardship is the essential part of CLT. That is the community of the community land trust.
Thank you. We're getting pretty close to 8 and the HHSAB has some other business on our agenda. So I wanted to close with one question. I think this will be primarily for Rob and Wynisha, but Vince and Michelle, if you'd like to chime in, you're more than welcome. The question is that, you know, across these presentations, there was sort of spaces given that highlighted the challenges of this work specifically in the Ann Arbor market. Within the context of Washtenaw County or the Ann Arbor market and our neighboring areas. So what are some things that you think could change that we could advocate for that might expand the reach of your programs to more households within Ann Arbor, if there is anything? Or is there a sort of readjustment of our perspective that might need to happen for sort of the expansion of availability of these programs? I'm not really sure which way, but would either of you like to take up, or any of you like to take up that question?
I mean, I'll start or try. The you know, in Ann Arbor, as I mentioned, it's really about the property tax. And when Teresa went over the the shared equity model and the deed restrictions and things like that. I mean, obviously the the property taxes are much lower for families that are participating in that part of the program. And maybe what we could find in Ann Arbor would be some kind of a hybrid between the two, something between the typical market rate transaction and the long-term deed restricted transaction. Maybe there's something in between that would allow for property taxes to be more affordable, perhaps for families of a certain income or for a certain time period, to allow them to establish themselves. That's one thing that kind of came to mind as we were talking about this.
Yeah, this is Wynisha. I can add to that. I would agree 100%. But one of the things I like to mention is this is one of the reasons why partnering with Habitat makes our program so successful. It's because the homes are much more affordable for our participants. We've been tossing around different types of ideas of ways that we can buy down the mortgage for the families to make the homes more affordable. Other than that, as I mentioned earlier, one of the other challenges for our families is that 50% median income guideline. If they were able to exceed that, we have some wiggle room to increase the amount of the voucher in terms of how the housing assistance subsidy is actually counted to go towards the purchase or the monthly mortgage. However, with that AMI being so low, oftentimes the family, it's really easy for the family to income out of the program.
I got a couple questions.
James has his hand up too. I don't know if you could see.
Oh, James.
Yeah, James, you want to go with your question? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. Oh. I don't think I can unmute you.
Can you
There
hear me
you are.
now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Mr. Daniels.
How you doing?
Oh,
I just
wonderful.
want to say that I'm a proud member of Arrowwood Cooperative. I've been here 25 years and it's great. I raised 3 sons here and they have all went off into the world to other places and they can't never wait to get back here. You know, they come back here every once in a while. And I wish there was more places like this. And I wish there was some way you could find out how we can get some more cooperatives, because this is a great place to live. And I've been on the board of directors. I have been on several committees here, and I do find your political voice every once in a while, about every 3 or 4 months, and we have a wonderful manager and Miss Ashford here.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Yes. So I just want to say kudos for Arrowwood. All right.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
David?
I wanted to say something similar. I think Arrowwood has been in recent years a very successful model. I've heard a lot of interest in the cooperative model, which to me sounds very similar to the CLT, functionally very similar to the CLT model that Vince was presenting, although it sounded, and maybe you can comment on this, it sounded like the CLT model is slightly more expensive, like it's a reduction from market rate, but not anywhere near the prices at Arrowwood. And I know James well, and my mom lives at Arrowwood for a decade now, maybe a bit more. And so I've heard a lot of interest over the last decade or 2 decades in that kind of model among our leaders in our community and stuff. And I've also heard this thing like we've heard tonight, that the funding that created that is just not there. That funding model is not there anymore. But if either Michelle or Vince have any thoughts that you can share with us of who we would go to talk more about that funding model, what is missing that's not there anymore? Is it simply a 50-year mortgage with of a certain amount of money? And if so, like somebody can describe to me and to James and to the community what's missing that we need, and can it be replaced by one of the other mechanisms that exist now, or private equity, or something else? And tell me how to go get it, and then we can go get it and make that model work. And similarly, Vince, if you want to comment on this, I kind of followed your diagram that was really helpful on like how the ownership works and stuff. You got a nonprofit board that owns the land. Where does the money come from to buy the land in this model? And how much? How does it get started?
So I couldn't put my credit for that diagram. Teresa got it from the League of Cities, although it's actually originated from our organization. So the whole article report is from Ground Assistance Network. Anyways, one challenge, well, the challenge that I didn't mention, challenging about CLT and many other localized models, is this scalability. Is how to make it, the model is great, how to make it a much larger impact. That's what we as a national organization has been thinking about. So when all the conferences conversation, we talk about barriers and challenges. All it comes down to is, not surprisingly, money, right? A lot of money that supports CLTs and local nonprofits are CDBG money from a federal perspective, are the homes funding. And we know that because there are different models, there's a variety of things that we need to prioritize. Renters, there's other aspects, because homes money and the CDBG money, they're not just for affordable housing. They're not only for CLT. So there's internally competition within like how to get the money, because like you allocate it to a city, there's that much that you're talking about, right? And so there's competition. And then there is like, you know, federal money, state money is dwindling. So we need to think creatively, locally, and if there's other ways we can get money. If not money, the land. If not land, you know, the properties. So like just think about creative ways to do that. And we also internally we are thinking about innovative financing ideas. Try to use like more philanthropic financing sources to potentially do a more like a rent to own type of way. So like we buy houses to rent for a certain period of time and then convert that to homeownership. So there's different ways we're thinking about that, but it's hard, David, to answer your question, like where to get the money. That's everybody has been thinking for a long time.
Yeah, if I could add to that, when we do we have a couple sessions on financing, and even though it's geared towards rental, it's the same issues, it's the same model, it's the same everything. Because you have to acquire or build whatever it is you're building or acquiring. And when we do tax credit financing, it covers 60 to 70% of the total cost as grant-like money. And then we get another maybe 10 or 15% as grant-like money. To have actual membership fees like Arrowwood has in the 500, 600, 700, you can't have a lot of debt. You have a tiny amount of debt. And then everything else pays for the cost of maintaining your properties, Michelle and her staff, and all the normal things that happen, whether it's a rental or a co-op or a land trust, like you got to pay for things. And so you have to have tons and tons of grant-like money up front to do any kind of affordable housing. It doesn't matter which model we're talking about. And the scaling up that Vince is talking about, it's much easier to spread those costs on bigger properties than smaller. So like Arrowwood's a really big property. And so you have lots of volume to be able to spread those costs around. That's why it's hard to do something now that was able to be done 40 years ago and keep it in place. And really for every model, Habitat 2, everybody struggles with maintenance. Everybody. How do you generate enough revenue as a homeowner who's low income, or a renter, or a co-op, or it doesn't really matter. When you have, if you're low income households, how do you generate enough revenue to make sure you cover ongoing maintenance? Those are big issues in taxes. And Ann Arbor's tax, bad for low income.
Teresa.
I want to thank our speakers. I think we are wrapping up. I appreciate you so much for taking a Thursday night or afternoon to be with us. It was so wonderful to have you and be able to kind of look at all this all together. So thank you, and round of applause to Michelle and Vince and Wanisha and Rob. Thank you again for being with us tonight. You don't have to stick around if you don't want to, but you're welcome to stay.
So we're going to go ahead and carry forward with the sort of business as usual of the Housing and